Have you ever felt the world tilt a quarter inch sideways? Just enough to see the seam where the wallpaper does not quite meet? You are listening to Seekers of Otherworldly and Unknown Legends. I am Josh, and I'll be your host. So far, we have walked the scar tissue of history, battlefields that never stopped echoing, accidents that scarred the places where they occurred, and we have explored stories of cryptids that some believe slipped through where those tragedies occurred. We asked what lingers after the headlines fade. Tonight, we go further because some people did not stop at ghosts in the woods or footprints on a ridgeline. They built entire cosmologies around the idea that this traffic, this news feed, this skin is not the only layer. Some called it the next level, the fifth density, the etheric plane, Ashtar's command deck, the new Earth. Sometimes they printed pamphlets, sometimes they left this world altogether. In this episode, we're laying the case files out on the table. Raelians waiting for their Elohim, the Heaven's Gate travelers who booked passage on a comet's tail, the Aetherius Society listening for interplanetary masters, the Czech universe people who still scan the sky for Ashtar Sharon, the universal White Brotherhood dancing on a Bulgarian mountain to tune themselves to a higher frequency, the modern Starseed Channels and Dolores Cannon's QHHT explorers who swear ancient peoples didn't vanish, they shifted. We are not here to canonize or condemn. We are here to peel back the layers. Ritual, revelation, charisma, catastrophe, and ask what sits at the core. A belief that another world is humming, just out of phase, and that we might already have the coordinates. So grab those drinks, dim the lights if you want, or keep them on. The doorway we are talking about tonight does not care either way. This is Seekers of Otherworldly and Unknown Legends. And this is the night we learn how far some seekers were willing to go to step through. Here's the first case file. Raelism, the International Raelian Movement. On the morning of December 13th, 1973, French auto racing journalist Claude Vorilhon, later called Rael, said he was approached by a small humanoid being, an Eloha, plural Elohim, who landed a craft inside the inactive volcano, sorry if I butcher any of this, Puy du Lacelas, near Clermont-Ferrand, France. Over 6 consecutive days, the being dictated a message, and 3 days later, Vorilhon was told the name for the new religion, Madak, Movement for Welcoming the Elohim, Creators of Humanity. He published the revelations in 1974 as the message given to me by extraterrestrials, changed his name to Rael, and formally organized followers into what became the International Raelian Movement, classified by scholars as a UFO religion founded in the 1970s. The movement remains publicly active. The IRM's press office released a major statement on August 4th, 2025, announcing a spiritual realignment, dissolving its Israeli branch and creating a Palestinian branch. Raelian gatherings were filmed as recently as November 2nd, 2025 in Okinawa, and the group continues to run its Embassy for Extraterrestrials project with a timeline that projects diplomatic steps between 2019 and 2025 and construction by around 2030. Academic fact sheets also note the Raelian movement remains active and they have defended their rights through court cases and public demonstrations. Raelism is an explicitly atheist UFO religion. Its central claim, an advanced extraterrestrial species called the Elohim created all life on Earth, including humans, through genetic engineering in laboratories. Those Elohim were misinterpreted by ancient peoples as gods. The Elohim have sent roughly 40 human Elohim hybrids as prophets: Buddha, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, etc., with Rael as the 40th and final messenger. Since the Hiroshima bombing in 1945, humanity has entered an age of apocalypse. If we learn to use science peacefully, the Elohim will return openly. Hence, Raelians campaign to build an embassy or landing pad for them. And they promote physical immortality through cloning, sensual meditation, and a pacifist, sex-positive ethic. Raelians do not talk about astral planes or parallel dimensions the way Theosophy or the Starseed Channels do. Their other world is a physical one. Rael's messages claim the Elohim, the advanced extraterrestrial scientists who engineered life on Earth, live on an exoplanet somewhere in our galaxy, often described simply as the Elohim's planet. They are not spirits in another dimension. They are flesh and blood, though technologically immortal, beings who visited Earth in antiquity, were mistaken for gods, and who will return openly when humanity is ready. Raelian cosmology also teaches an infinity of universes, big and small, where everything is made of smaller universes and exists inside larger ones, but that is framed as a material, scale-based infinity rather than a mystical plane. Can humans travel there, and how? Two ways appear in their doctrine that Raelian followers can travel to the Elohim's planet: by invitation aboard Elohim craft. The Elohim have the technology to cross interstellar space in UFOs. Rael says he was taken on board in 1973 and again in 1975, and the movement's signature project is to build an embassy for the Elohim, a diplomatic landing site, so the Elohim can land and meet humanity publicly. When that happens, selected humans would be able to travel with them. Through cloning and mind upload, Raelians reject an immortal soul and instead promote physical immortality via cloning. The affiliated company CloneAid, founded by Raelian Bishop Bridget Bosselier, publicized the claim of a cloned baby in 2002, and the movement teaches that consciousness can be transferred to a cloned body, an approach they say mirrors how the Elohim themselves achieve endless life. In other words, you do not ascend to another dimension. You are physically recreated and can live on the Elohim world. So, for Raelism, the other world is a literal planet populated by the Elohim, reachable either when they land their craft at a future embassy or, symbolically, through the promise of technological rebirth via cloning, rather than a spiritual passage into another dimensional realm. Second file, Heaven's Gate. Originally, human individual metamorphosis, then Total Overcomers Anonymous. The group began in the early 1970s when Marshall Herff Applewhite, a former music professor, and Bonnie Lou Nettles, a nurse, met in 1972 and concluded they were the two witnesses of revelation. By 1974 to 75, they were traveling the U.S., recruiting crew members under the name Human Individual Metamorphosis. Nettles died in 1985, and Applewhite continued as sole leader. No functioning communal group exists. The remaining 39 members, including Applewhite, died in a March 1997 mass suicide at Rancho Santa Fe, California. The group's website has been maintained by two surviving former members, but there is no organized recruitment or communal practice today. Heaven's Gate mixed evangelical apocalypticism, New Age ufology, and science fiction. They taught that human bodies are merely vehicles or containers for developing souls, and that Earth is a garden overseen by an extraterrestrial kingdom of heaven. The next level, also called the evolutionary level above human, they taught that human bodies are merely vehicles or containers for developing souls, and that Earth is a garden overseen by an extraterrestrial kingdom of heaven. The next level, also called the evolutionary level above humans. Applewhite and Nettles claimed to be incarnate representatives of that level, their older members. Heaven's Gate's other world is literal outer space, not a mystical plane. The next level is a physical, technologically advanced realm inhabited by immortal, genderless beings. To reach it, you must graduate from the human level by shedding the human vehicle. Followers underwent rigorous overcoming of human attachments, sex, family, ego, even their names, to prepare their souls for departure. Boarding a spacecraft. In 1997, Applewhite linked the arrival of comet Hale-Bopp and rumors of a UFO trailing it to the moment the next level ship would collect them. Members consumed phenobarbital and vodka and placed plastic bags over their heads, believing their consciousness would be beamed or transferred onto the craft accompanying the comet and transported to the next level's realm in space. So, Heaven's Gate framed the other world as a material extraterrestrial kingdom, and the passage there required deliberate death of the human body, timed to a celestial sign. Third file, the Aetherius Society. Often cited as the first organized UFO religion and the most enduring. In May 1954, London taxi driver George King, later Dr. George King, said he heard a voice telling him, "Prepare yourself. You are to become the voice of the interplanetary parliament." After a reported contact with a Venusian master named Aetherius in 1955, he founded the Aetherius Society that same year, incorporated 1956, in London, England. King channeled messages from the cosmic masters, and the group grew out of that first contact. The society still operates from its headquarters in London and Los Angeles, runs regular services, publishes King's trance transmissions, and maintains an active website and podcast. Academic surveys list it as probably the first and certainly the most enduring UFO cult. Parliament. The Aetherius Society is a theosophically flavored UFO religion. Its central claim: Earth is watched and assisted by an interplanetary parliament of spiritually advanced beings, cosmic masters, or space intelligences from other planets in the solar system: Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. They work under the Great White Brotherhood of Ascended Masters. It bears mentioning the Great White Brotherhood is not a reference to race, but rather a reference to the purity of the soul. Humanity's purpose is to cooperate with these masters through selfless service, karma balancing, and spiritual energy work to help usher in the new age. Their other worlds are physical planets in our own solar system, but inhabited on higher vibrational levels. For example, Venusians exist in a subtler, etheric state. These masters are already operating in a higher dimension of the same planets. Humans can interact with them in two main ways: channeling or telepathic contact. King served as the primary mental channel for the masters. Members still receive transmissions via prayer and meditation. Spiritual energy missions. The Society runs collective practices like Operation Prayer Power and Spiritual Energy Batteries, where prayer is stored and then released by the Masters to aid humanity. King also described being taken out of his body in projection experiences to witness the master's craft. But the group emphasizes service rather than physically leaving Earth. The ultimate goal is to raise human consciousness so that, after sufficient spiritual evolution, individuals can join the cosmic masters on their higher dimensional plane. So, for the Aetherius Society, the other worlds are both literal planets and higher vibrational realms on those planets. Travel is achieved through consciousness, telepathic contact, spiritual projection, and eventually graduating to the master's level, rather than boarding a physical ship in this lifetime. Fourth file, universe people. Check, again, apologies if I butcher this, Vesmirni Ide, also known as cosmic people of light powers. The movement coalesced in the mid-1990s around Czech contactee Ivo A. Benda. Their public teaching began after Benda reported telepathic contact with extraterrestrials in October 1997, later claiming direct personal meetings. Universe people are described as a Czech Slavic UFO religion and a doomsday cult founded in the 1990s and centered on Ivo A. Benda. They are still active, though smaller and largely online. They continue to run Czech and Slavic language websites, some under domains referencing Ashtar Shirin, and issue statements. For example, since 2007, they have campaigned against RFID implants, or radio frequency identification implants. Czech media still note their presence, and scholars list them as the most distinctive UFO religion in the Czech Republic. Universe people teach that benevolent extraterrestrial civilizations, the light powers, guide humanity and communicate telepathically with chosen contactees, Benda being chief among them. They venerate a syncretic pantheon, Ashtar or Ashtar Shirin, alongside Jesus, Krishna, and other spiritual figures. They also warn of a malevolent reptilian factor, saurians or lizard people, who seek to control humanity, hence their anti-chip activism. Their other worlds are physical planets and fleets of spacecrafts inhabited by the light powers, described as existing at a higher vibrational or frequency level. Followers believe contact is primarily telepathic or astral. Communication occurs via channeling and mental resonance with the Space Brothers. Physical evacuation is possible. In their millenarian outlook, the light powers will eventually evacuate worthy humans in their ships to safe planets or higher dimensional realms, echoing a big beam evacuation trope common in contactee literature, transformation into a higher frequency or half ethereal body. Transformation of the body. After the coming transformation, humans will live in a half ethereal, half etheric body, whose atoms oscillate in such a high frequency that we will become invisible to normal physical eyes, allowing life in the higher realm with the Space Brothers. So, universe people frame the other world as both a fleet of advanced civilizations and a higher frequency state of existence. Travel is achieved first by telepathic contact and, ultimately, by being lifted aboard the light powers craft or transformed into a higher vibrational body when the time comes. Fifth file, the Universal White Brotherhood. Founded in Bulgaria in the early 1900s by Peter Denov, spiritual name Bansa Duno, Denov began public lectures in 1900, opened an esoteric school in Sofia in 1922, and taught a syncretic Christian esoteric path. After his death in 1944, his disciple, Omaram Mikhail Ivanov, carried the teaching to France in 1937 and expanded it internationally. The movement's annual communal rite, Pani Uar Ivmai, has been performed on the 7 Rila lakes since the 1930s. The Al Jazeera English reel from August 20th, 2025 shows a large gathering, hundreds in white folk costumes, performing Pane Eurythmy on a fog-shrouded Rila mountaintop, with a participant calling it the biggest day for us and explicitly linking it to the Universal White Brotherhood. The Brotherhood maintains centers in Bulgaria, France, Switzerland, Canada, and elsewhere, with annual August gatherings at the Rila Lakes. The Brotherhood teaches that all human beings belong to a universal spiritual family under one divine principle. It blends Eastern Orthodoxy, Hindu and karma ideas, and esoteric Christianity, practice of love, wisdom, truth, purity, and living in harmony with nature. Hani Eurythmy, a circle dance with music, movement, and prayer, is seen as a method to harmonize the individual with cosmic rhythms. They speak of a dual universe, the visible material world, and a spiritual world governed by divine law and consciousness, echoed in esoteric Christian cosmology. The other world is a higher spiritual plane, the realm of the great universal brotherhood of advanced souls and angels. Access is not via spacecraft, but through inner transformation. Spiritual attunement in this life, prayer, meditation, music, and paneuarrhythmy align the practitioner's vibrations with the higher world. After death ascent, the soul, purified by ethical living and spiritual practice, rises into the divine realm to join the White Brotherhood. The dance itself is framed as a rehearsal for that harmony. Participants state that the day is linked to the Universal White Brotherhood, a spiritual movement, and treat the ritual as participation in a cosmic order. So, the Universal White Brotherhood locates the other world as a spiritual plane of divine consciousness and teaches that travel there is accomplished through moral life, meditative practices, and communal rites that tune the soul to that higher frequency. Sixth file, Starseed or Chosen Ones channeling networks, sometimes called the Pleiadians, Arcturian, or Syrian mission. There is no single founder. The term star people or star seeds entered popular esotericism with Brad Steiger's 1976 book, Gods of Aquarius, later Star People, and was amplified by 1980s to 90s channelers, for example, Barbara Marciniak's Pleiadian messages. It exploded online in the 2010s to 2020s as individual creators began posting short videos describing themselves as incarnated extraterrestrials. A March 2026 reel explicitly frames chosen ones, also called starseeds, as high-dimensional beings who have incarnated into human form to fulfill a specific mission. Social platforms are saturated with starseed content. TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook Reels from 2025 to 2026 describe 5D activation, DNA upgrades, and messages from Pleiadians or Arcturian collectives. A February 2026 post advertises activating dimensions and parallel worlds with Pleiadian artwork, positioning the teaching as an ongoing spiritual service. Starseeds teach that certain human souls originated on other star systems, Pleiades, Sirius, Arcturus, Andromeda, etc., and voluntarily incarnated on Earth. Their purpose is to help Earth transition from 3D density to a higher 5D or New Earth consciousness. The other world is both the home star system and a higher dimensional plane, 4D, 5D, even 7D, where those civilizations exist. The nature of the starseed world is described as a higher frequency dimension layered over physical reality. Planets exist physically, but their civilizations operate at a vibrational level humans cannot normally perceive. How you get there. Awakening and remembrance. Through meditation, light language, DNA activations, and channeling, starseeds remember their origin and raise their personal frequency. Embodied service. By anchoring higher frequency energy, often via group meditations or energy work, they believe they help shift the collective field. After death return or dimensional shift. When the incarnation ends, or when Earth collectively ascends, the soul returns to its home dimension or to the emerging 5D Earth. The March 2026 reel frames this as starseeds, already aware of their galactic origins and here on a mission, not needing a ship in this life. In short, Starseed Channels treat the other world as a higher dimensional version of familiar star systems, and travel is an inner process, frequency activation and eventual return, rather than a physical departure. Seventh file, Dolores Cannon and QHHT, or Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. American hypnotherapist Dolores Cannon, 1931 to 2014, began experimenting with past life regression in the late 1960s with her husband Johnny. After his death, she refined the method in the 1970s to 80s into what she trademarked as QHHT. She published a series of books: Keepers of the Garden, The Custodians, the Convoluted Universe series, The Three Waves of Volunteers, and The New Earth, and founded the Dolores Cannon Academy, which still trains practitioners today. The Academy and a global network of QHHT practitioners continue to run sessions and publish content. Social posts in late 2025 explicitly reference Dolores Cannon's teachings. A December 31st, 2025 reel describes the idea that ancient groups like the Mayans and certain Native American tribes shifted their consciousness to a higher dimensional frequency rather than disappearing, presented as part of the QHHT cosmological narrative. QHHT teaches that the subconscious or higher self holds access to all past and parallel lives, including extraterrestrial incarnations. Cannon reported that many clients under deep trance described Earth as a school, and that three waves of volunteers, starseeds or indigos, came to help humanity shift to a new Earth, a higher frequency 5D reality. Nature of the world. A spectrum of dimensions or frequencies, 3D Earth, 4D transition, 5D new Earth, plus the homeworlds of the volunteers, often described as Pleiadian, Arcturian, or Sirian. The other world is both a parallel Earth and the higher dimensional plane those souls originate from. How you get there. Hypnotic regression, QHHT session. In a trance state, the client's higher self can travel to other lifetimes, other planets, and the between life realm, retrieving information and healing. Consciousness shift. Cannon taught that whole civilizations, for example, the Mayans or the Hopi, could collectively raise their frequency and shift to a higher dimension. They did not die out, they moved. Planetary ascension. The ongoing new Earth is created as enough individuals raise their vibration. Ultimately, souls return to their higher dimensional home or continue on the new 5D Earth. So, Dolores Cannon's QHHT frames the other world as a higher frequency dimension, often 5D or New Earth, reachable via deep hypnosis, inner frequency work, and ultimately by the collective shift Cannon's volunteers came to assist. That concludes this collection of case files. Lay them out on the table. Rael's gleaming Elohim Labs. Heaven's Gate staring at a comet's tail. George King taking dictation from a Venusian parliament. Ivo Benda's faxes from the Ashtar Command. The White Brotherhood's white-clad circle on the Ryla. The Starseed Kid on TikTok whispering about a 5D upgrade. Dolores Cannon's clients describing a Mayan village that did not collapse, it shifted. We do not belong to any of them. We are not handing out pamphlets, and we are definitely not telling anyone to chase a comet or sell anything for an embassy. But if you squint, the shapes line up. Nearly every one of them is saying the same thing in a different accent. There's another layer right here pressed against ours like a second sheet of tracing paper. They give it different addresses: a planet in the Pleiades, the next level in orbit, the etheric cities of Venus, a 5D new Earth, a higher frequency Rila. They argue about how you get there: ship, suicide, meditation, hypnosis, dance, DNA activation. The methods are wildly uneven, and a few are tragic. We are not endorsing the how, but the pattern. That is the part that snags. Because here is what we keep seeing in our own files and research. A trail cam catches a shape that is there for 3 frames and then is gone. A hunter hears knuckle knocks, then a smell like ozone, then a lack of sound, as if the forest inhaled. A kid swears a dog man stepped out of a shimmer line over a frozen creek and the air went cold enough to burn. We have called them cryptids: Bigfoot, the Beast of Bray Road, the Loveland Frogman, the Marphalites that never behave like headlights. They appear where the map gets thin: fault lines, limestone caves, old battlefields, places people have poured grief into for generations. What if we have been filing them under monster when they belong under misfire? Take the through line from our case files. The world is not single. Every group we just profiled: Raelians, Heaven's Gate, Aetherius, Universe People, the Brotherhood, the Starseeds, Canon's QHHT, insists reality is layered. A physical Earth plus an adjacent band that vibrates faster, sits above, or runs parallel. Call it the next level: 5D, etheric Venus, the Elohim's planet, the new Earth. Different nouns, same geometry. Crossings have triggers. Applewhite tied it to a comet. King tied it to prayer and planetary alignments. Danov tied it to a dance at sunrise on a mountain. Benda tied it to frequency. Canon tied it to a collective shift. The mechanism differs, but each claims there are moments: astronomical events, rituals, trauma, focused intent. When the membrane thins, you do not always see a ship. The White Brotherhood says you tune yourself like an instrument. Starseeds say you remember. Canon says you go under and the higher self shows you. Even the Raelians, the most materialist of the bunch, hedge their bet with cloning, as if the body is a radio you can retune. Now, map that onto cryptids. What if a Sasquatch is not a relic hominid hiding in the Cascades, but a brief bleed through from a neighboring band of forest that runs a half step out of phase with ours? What if the Marphalites are not swamp gas, but the running lights of something navigating a route that is mostly there and only occasionally here? What if the high strangeness around sightings, electronics dying, time dilating, that ozone smell, isn't a byproduct, but the signature of a crossing? The same way the groups describe a vibration, a frequency shift, a thinning. We are not saying the groups were right about their addresses, their profits, or their exit strategies. We are saying the question they kept asking, is there another world pressed against this one, is older than any of them. And it keeps showing up in our research from people who never read a word of Rael or King. If they were onto something, even by accident, then the cryptids are not visitors from another planet so much as neighbors from the next room, stepping through when the door rattles. During a storm, during a mass, during a tragedy, during a dance at sunrise on a Bulgarian ridge. That is the theory we are tabling tonight. Not a doctrine, not a map, just a pattern. If the membrane is real, then the creatures we chase might not be hiding. They might be commuting. And if that is true, the next time the air goes quiet and the hair on your neck stands up, you might not be witnessing a monster. You might be witnessing a commute. Moving forward, let us explore these other worlds more in depth. See if there's any further overlap in their beliefs. The next level, aka the evolutionary level above human, Tila, the Heaven's Gate version of the other world. What is it believed to look like? It is not a cloud in harp heaven. Heaven's Gate described the next level as a physical, technological realm, a literal level of existence above human, as distinct from us as humans are from insects. Members spoke of next-level bodies that are androgynous, ageless, and perfected, free of human drives, sex, ego, attachment. The environment is orderly, hierarchical, and sterile clean, more laboratory spaceship than pastoral afterlife. Where is it? Not up in a mystical sense, but out there, in space, aboard craft, and on worlds operated by the older members. Applewhite and Nettles taught that the kingdom of heaven is a material realm in the literal heavens, outer space, accessible via spacecraft rather than metaphysical planes. The cloud that carried Jesus was, in their reading, a UFO. The next level is where those craft come from and return to. Heaven's Gate outlined 4 paths to graduate: physical pickup, a next-level spacecraft, a telecraft, descends, collects the prepared follower, and their human body is biochemically transformed aboard into a next-level body, their UFO rapture version. Death by natural, accidental, or violent means. The soul leaves the container, human body, and is issued a next-level body. Death by outside persecution, a fear amplified after Waco and Ruby Ridge. This one basically speaks for itself. And finally, willful exit, the deliberate, dignified shedding of the body, which the group ultimately acted on in March of 1997, when 39 members died by suicide in Rancho Santa Fe, believing their consciousness would transfer to waiting next-level bodies. Preparation required a rigorous process of overcoming human attachments, sex, family, ego, and even their names, living communally and monastically so that the vehicle was ready. Who lives there? Older members, senior next-level beings who shepherd younger souls. T, Bonnie Nettles, and Doe, Marshall Applewhite, claimed to be incarnate older members, the 2 witnesses of Revelation. Graduated former humans who have received next-level bodies, immortal, genderless, without human appetites. The next level is presented as hierarchical and team-based, crews and tasks, operating under a strict discipline of service. Does it interact with our world? Yes, but covertly. The next level is said to have seeded and guided humanity across history, biblical figures reinterpreted as next-level emissaries. They tag and recruit suitable individuals, communicate through chosen representatives, T and Doe, and monitor Earth. The group believed Jesus' ascension was a pickup by a next-level craft, and that the next level would recycle Earth at the end of the age. Public contact was limited to these emissaries. Otherwise, the level remains hidden until a pickup window opens. For example, the Heil Bob moment. Interesting notes. The next level concept explicitly rejects the idea of a soul as naturally immortal. You only get a next level body if you earn it. After Nettles died of cancer in 1985, doctrine shifted. Originally, they expected to board a craft alive. Later, they accepted that death could be the transfer point. The group's website is still maintained by a couple of surviving former members, a strange digital after-echo of a movement whose theology said the body is just a container. 5D, the fifth dimension or New Earth, the version that shows up in Starseed Channels, QHHT sessions, and much of contemporary New Age lore. What is it believed to look like? Not a place you can point to on a star chart, but a higher frequency state of reality layered over the physical world. Descriptions converge on a realm that feels lighter, more fluid, and responsive to thought and intention. The New Earth is often pictured as a cleaned up, harmonious version of this planet, lush, luminous, free of fear-based systems, where time feels less linear and communication is telepathic. In the December 31st, 2025 reel, Dolores Cannon's cosmology is cited to claim that groups like the Mayans did not vanish, they shifted their consciousness to a higher dimensional frequency, implying they moved into a 5D version of Earth that coexists with ours. Where is it? Right here, overlaid on 3D Earth, but vibrating at a faster rate. Think two radio stations on different frequencies. Many teachers describe it as both an inner plane, a state of consciousness, and an emergent planetary field that will become the dominant reality as enough people raise their vibration. Home 5D civilizations are often linked to the Pleiades, Sirius, Arcturus, etc., but those are seen as operating at the same dimensional level. How do you get there? It is an inside-out transition, not a boarding pass. Raise your frequency through meditation, DNA activations, service, releasing fear or trauma, and aligning with love and compassion. The March 2026 reel calls starseeds high-dimensional beings, already aware of their galactic origins, here to fulfill a specific mission of anchoring that frequency. Collective threshold. The new Earth becomes perceptible when a critical mass of consciousness stabilizes at 5D. Individuals may experience bleed through, glimpses, synchronicities, time slips before the full shift. Death or transition. If you do not embody 5D in this life, the soul returns to its higher dimensional home and can re-engage later. Cannon's QHHT work framed the three waves of volunteers as souls who incarnated specifically to help midwife this shift. Who lives there? Higher dimensional humans, New Earth humanity, versions of ourselves free from fear-based patterns, galactic families, Pleiadians, Arcturians, Sirians, etc., described as benevolent, telepathic, androgynous, or lightly embodied individuals. Ascended teachers and the higher self, the subconscious in QHHT that can access all lifetimes and guide the process. Does it interact with our world? Constantly, but subtly. Interactions are energetic rather than overt. Guidance through intuition, dreams, channeling, synchronicities, downloads, and the feeling that time is speeding up or glitching. The March 2026 post markets activating dimensions and parallel worlds as an ongoing process you can participate in now. The claim is not that ships will land to ferry people away. It is that the frequency of 5D is already interpenetrating 3D, and those attuned can perceive and act as bridges. Interesting notes. 5D language borrows heavily from Theosophy's planes, but strips out most hierarchy. Anyone can tune in. It is explicitly non-apocalyptic in tone. The shift is described as a graduation, not an evacuation, which is why it contrasts with Heaven's Gate's pickup model. The idea is self-referential. The more people talk about 5D, the more they claim to see evidence that the shift is underway. For example, Mandela effect type memory glitches. The etheric or higher material Venus. the Aetherius Society's version of the other world. What is it believed to look like? It is not the hellish greenhouse planet our probes photographed. Aetherius Society materials are explicit. Not Venus as we know it, but a higher material plane of Venus, which exists at a different frequency of vibration. In other words, the same planetary body, but its matter is organized on a finer, subtler grade, what 19th century esotericists called the etheric or higher material level. Think of it as Venus overlaid with a luminous, more refined version of itself, a realm of light, order, and advanced civilization that our instruments cannot register because they are tuned to the denser physical band. Where is it? Co-located with physical Venus in our solar system, but operating on a different vibrational frequency. The Society's own page, Jesus is from Venus, repeats the phrasing, an advanced master from the planet Venus, not Venus as we know it, but a higher material plane of Venus, which exists at a different frequency of vibration. So, it is right there, astronomically, yet inaccessible to telescopes, because it is a subtler octave of matter. How do you get there? You do not book a flight in this life. The crossing is consciousness-based and by invitation, telepathic contact or channeling. Founder George King claimed his initial contact in 1954 was a voice telling him, "Prepare yourself, you are to become the voice of the interplanetary parliament." And he later channeled Aetherius, a Venusian master. Practitioners today still receive guidance through meditation and trance mediumship. Spiritual service. The Society's core practices, Operation Prayer Power, Operation Starlight, pilgrimages, spiritual energy batteries, are meant to attune participants to the higher frequency and cooperate with the masters. The goal is to prepare the way for closer contact with and ultimately meetings with the people from the other planets. Post-mortem advancement. After sufficient spiritual development, and in some teachings after death, a soul can function on that higher plane and dwell among the masters. Who lives there? The cosmic masters and space intelligences such as Aetherius himself, and, in their theology, figures like Jesus and Buddha, all described as highly evolved beings from the etheric Venus and other planets. The Society states flatly, we believe he is a highly evolved being from the planet Venus. A hierarchy called the Interplanetary Parliament and the Great White Brotherhood, coordinating benevolent intervention on Earth. Does it interact with our world? Yes, but subtly and through human collaborators. The Masters are said to send telepathic transmissions, direct cosmic missions where human prayer is stored in spiritual energy batteries and released for healing and disaster relief, have intervened in history, for example, the star over Bethlehem, reinterpreted as a Saturnian craft, and plan a future public appearance of the next master, who will descend in a flying saucer. Interesting notes. The Society frames itself as a service-oriented religion rather than an evacuation cult. The emphasis is on cooperating with the masters to raise Earth's spiritual caliber. The etheric concept is borrowed from Theosophy and Rosicrucianism, 4 grades of ether, with the higher ones invisible to normal sight, repurposed here for an entire planetary civilization. Unlike Heaven's Gate, there is no push to physically leave Earth now. The etheric Venus is a present, coexisting realm you tune into, not a place you board a ship to reach. The Elohim's planet, the Raelian version of the other world. What is it believed to look like? It is not a mystical plane, it is a high-tech exoplanet inhabited by the Elohim, a civilization of human-like scientists, roughly 25,000 years ahead of us technologically. Raelian literature describes their world as lush, carefully engineered, and dominated by laboratories, pleasure gardens, and architecture that reflects their scientific mastery. Because the Elohim are biological, not energy beings, their planet is a physical place with climate, cities, and ecosystems, all optimized by design. Where is it? No precise coordinates are given. Rail's messages say it is outside our solar system, far enough that Earth's telescopes cannot resolve it, yet within reach of the Elohim's craft. In practical terms, it is elsewhere, a real planet orbiting another star, not a hidden dimension layered onto Earth. How do you get there? Access is by invitation, after death, via cloning, or at the time of open contact. Physical pickup in Elohim craft. The Elohim travel in what we call UFOs. They have allegedly visited Earth many times. Ezekiel's wheel, the Star of Bethlehem, etc. When they decide the time is right, they will land openly. Cloning and mind transfer. Raelians practice the transmission of the cellular plan, the baptism-like ritual. If you have had your cellular code recorded and you live according to the Elohim's guidelines, after you die, the Elohim can recreate you from your DNA on their planet in an adult body with your memories and personality intact. That is their version of eternal life. Embassy as a gateway. The movement seeks to build an embassy, originally requested for Jerusalem, now any neutral territory, as a diplomatic landing site. Once it exists, public contact and potential travel becomes possible. Who lives there? The Elohim themselves, described as about 4 foot tall, with pale greenish skin, large almond eyes, long dark hair, human in form. We were made in their image, but more delicate and scientifically advanced. Recreated humans, prophets, Moses, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, etc., whom the Elohim claimed to have cloned and kept alive on their planet, serving as a kind of council of preserved ambassadors. Eventually, were the Raelians, whose cellular plans have been transmitted and who are cloned after death. Does it interact with our world? Yes, but historically in disguise. The Elohim claim to have created all life on Earth 25,000 years ago via genetic engineering, hence Elohim plural in Genesis, sent prophets at intervals, their cloned messengers, to guide humanity, monitored humanity and periodically intervened, miracles equal advanced tech, maintained secrecy until humanity was mature enough, the nuclear age 1945. Rail's encounter in 1973 was the signal that open contact could begin. Interesting notes. Raelians are materialist. No soul, no supernatural realm, only DNA and science. Spiritual experiences are reinterpreted as advanced technology. The Elohim are not gods. They themselves were created by another civilization before them, implying a chain of engineered life. The movement's focus on sensuality, pleasure, and cloning is unique. The afterlife is literally a lab-grown body on another planet, not a frequency shift. There's a pattern hiding in plain sight. Give it different names: the fifth dimension, the etheric Venus, the Elohim's planet, the next level, and you get different costumes, but the skeleton is the same. A conviction that there is another layer pressed against this one, and that under the right conditions, you can step through. The 5D or New Earth. By definition, 5D is not up there, it is here, occupying the same space as our 3D world, but running at a faster vibratory rate. 2 radio stations broadcasting from the same tower on different frequencies. The landscape looks familiar. It's still Earth, only brighter, more responsive, less clogged with fear. You do not buy a ticket. You tune yourself. Meditation, so-called DNA activations, the slow work of shedding trauma, those are framed as dialing the receiver until the static clears and the other channel comes through. The people who live there are us, or versions of us, plus the Pleiadian and Arcturian families who allegedly already operate at that bandwidth. Interaction with our world is constant but subtle. Synchronicities, dreams, the sense that time stutters, the feeling that the air got thinner for a second and then snapped back. The etheric Venus and the mirror planets idea. The Aetherius Society takes the same layering logic and pins it to a planet we can point to. Their texts are explicit. Not Venus as we know it, but a higher material plane of Venus, which exists at a different frequency of vibration. In other words, the Venus our probes photographed, sulfuric, crushing, 800 degrees, is the dense version. Co-located with it is an etheric Venus, luminous, orderly, inhabited by the cosmic masters. If you accept that premise, there is no reason it stops at Venus. The cosmology invites a simple extrapolation. Every planet has a mirror self, a higher material octave of Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Earth itself, each running at a finer grade of matter that our instruments, tuned to the dense band, cannot register. Contact comes through channeling, ritual service, Operation Prayer Power, spiritual energy batteries, and ultimately through spiritual advancement after death. The beings are humanoid, benevolent, organized into an interplanetary parliament. They interact by sending telepathic transmissions and directing human collaborators. They do not land on the White House lawn. The Elohim's planet, the materialist outlier. Rael's Elohims stand apart, and that is what makes them useful as a contrast. Their world is not a higher frequency or an etheric octave. It is a physical exoplanet somewhere beyond our solar system, home to a civilization roughly 25,000 years ahead of us. The Elohim are biological, short, pale, large-eyed, but recognizably humanoid because, in this telling, we were made in their image through genetic engineering. There is no talk of souls or subtle planes. The afterlife is a lab procedure. If you have had your cellular plan transmitted in a Raelian baptism, the Elohim can clone you as an adult on their planet after you die. Memory, personality, the works. Interaction with Earth is historical and technological. They seeded life here, sent clone prophets, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, as messengers, and allegedly pilot the craft we call UFOs. They want an embassy, a diplomatic pad where they can land openly. It is a defiantly materialist version of the other world. No mysticism, just science we have not caught up to yet. The next level and why the method matters. Heaven's Gate called their destination the next level, the evolutionary level above humans. It reads like a hybrid of the two models above, a real physical realm in the literal heavens, yet entered only by shedding the human container. The next level is populated by older members and by graduated humans who have received androgynous, ageless bodies, free of human drives. It is hierarchical, team-based, and it interacts with Earth through emissaries, T and Doe, and occasionally pickups. Here's the part that cannot be glossed over. Their chosen method, willful exit, suicide, was extreme and tragic. That is a red flag, and it is not a path anyone should accept or promote. The theology, however, is revealing. In every description, the only way to board the craft is to leave the dense body behind. Even their early hope for a live pickup eventually gave way to the idea that death is the transfer point. In other words, the next level is physical and post-physical. You cannot walk on board as you are. The overlap. Strip away the branding and four claims repeat. There is another layer. Call it 5D, etheric, higher material, or a literal planet with better tech. It is an adjacent realm that coexists with ours. It is here, or nearly here. 5D is overlaid on Earth. Etheric Venus is co-located with physical Venus. The next level operates in our skies. Even the Elohim, while distant, keep visiting. Crossings have conditions: frequency work, ritual service, a prepared container, a genetic record, or death as transfer. Contact is quiet until it is not. Mostly telepathic nudges, dreams, and signs. Occasionally something steps through, a light, a craft, a figure. Why this matters for cryptids. If you take these cosmologies as mythic instruments, imperfect dials trying to tune the same signal, a picture sharpens. The other world is not a faraway star system you need a rocket to reach. It is a neighboring band of reality that occasionally bleeds through where the membrane is thin. Fault lines, limestone caves, old battlefields, places saturated with human emotion. Fold in the sheer volume of disappearances cataloged in Missing 411, people vanishing on trails in seconds, often near granite outcrops, water, and weird weather, and the hypothesis that interdimensional gateways exist at specific points starts to look less like sci-fi and more like pattern recognition. In that frame, a cryptid is not necessarily a relic hominid or an undiscovered ape. It is a commuter. A Sasquatch steps out of a tree line and the air goes ozone quiet because, for a breath, two frequencies have overlapped. The Marphalites behave like headlights until they do not because they are running a route that is mostly there and only occasionally here. The high strangeness, dead electronics, time dilation, the sudden absence of ambient sound, is the signature of a crossing, the same vibration shift the groups describe in spiritual language. We do not endorse the methods, certainly not the next levels, and we are not converting to anyone's doctrine. But across generations, cultures, and wildly different levels of technological optimism, the same insistence keeps surfacing. There is another layer, it is close, and sometimes things slip through. If that is true, the creatures we file under cryptid may not be hiding from us. They may just be stepping through the wrong door at the wrong time, and we happen to be standing on the other side when it happens. If any of this rattles something loose for you, if you have had that quiet moment where the air went thin and something that did not belong took one step into your world, write it down and send it our way. We are not here to hand out answers. We are here to keep the files open. If you've been writing with us through the Raelians, Heaven's Gate, King's Venus, Benda's Transmissions, the White Brotherhood, the Starseeds, and Dolores Cannon's QHHT, thank you. You are the reason this stays a conversation instead of a lecture. If you liked this episode, hit like, share it with the friend who texts you, "Did you see that light at 2 a.m.?" Subscribe and follow so the algorithm does not bury the weird stuff. It genuinely helps more than you think. Our home base is www.soulseekersunknown.com. Merchandise will be live through the site soon. Simple stuff, nothing flashy. If you've got a story, a photo, or a question, drop it at soulfilearchives@gmail.com. That's soulfilearchives, all one word. We read everything, even if we cannot reply to it all on the air. New episodes drop every Monday. We are also working out a slate of boots-on-the-ground specials, field investigations, night hikes, the kind of thing that only works for the folks who want to go deeper. That will live as subscriber content once we lock the calendar. A reminder that we will be live in person at the Grafton Monster Festival in West Virginia. Come say hi, tell us your story, heckle us politely, whatever feels right. We will have a table, we will have stickers, and we will have ears. Keep your eyes on the tree line, keep your recorder charged, and remember, sometimes the strangest thing is not the creature, it is the door it came through. I am Josh. This has been an episode of Seekers of Otherworldly and Unknown Legends. We will be back Monday. Good night, and watch the quiet places.